Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Steve Duvall, and we're here at the Sedona International Film Festival. We have a couple of distinct gentlemen with us, one of whom won't talk on the set here, and one of them who will talk on the set. So, John Mulholland, how are you today, John?
Good, thanks. Thank you for having me.
Nice to see you wander in the studio this afternoon. You never know, you never know. You have an interesting part in what's going on here today. Are you a filmmaker?
There are those that would disagree. Yeah, I wrote and directed this documentary.
Okay, and the documentary's name is?
Cooper and Hemingway, The True Gen.
Got it, okay. I'm, having just met you, I'm kind of coming up to speed so we can share with the audience what it is that you're doing here and you know, what this is all about. I really appreciate that. So tell me about this documentary.
Well, it explores the 20-year friendship between actor Gary Cooper and the writer Ernest Hemingway. They were each other's best friends the last 20 years of their life, even though very, very few people seem to know this.
Did they meet through the business or met by coincidence?
Hemingway in the late 30s, Hemingway throughout the 30s had grown fascinated with Gary Cooper's screen persona. He saw in Cooper's acting some of the same understated qualities that he felt he had as a writer. And he'd been trying to meet him in 38 and 39. It didn't work, and then in 1940 at Sun Valley, Idaho, they met.
And it was instant love?
Instant love, given that word these days. Yeah, it was. They developed a rapport almost immediately.
It's funny, you know, sometimes you'll meet somebody for the first time and it'll be just like picking up where we left off in the last life, perhaps. There's a familiarity that just kind of binds the two of you together.
Yeah, that those whom I talked to who knew them and were in fact were there at the time said it was interesting because there were very few words between them. They seemed to, through silences almost, something that is almost frowned on today, few words, but it worked for them.
Kind of an instant camaraderie.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've met a couple of people in my life I felt that way. It's really nice. So, you know, Gary Cooper made a few movies here in Sedona too. So it's kind of a coincidence that you're here. And
I didn't realize that.
Yeah. Some of the early Sedona history when they were making westerns here in the 40s, 30s, and 50s. Many names I can't recall off the top of my head, but maybe by the end of the festival I'll figure out.
Well, I'm sorry to have come unprepared and not having had that. I apologize.
They have the historical museum here in town where they have a lot of the old westerns that are accessible. You can even rent some of them, but you can't find in other places. So.
I must check that out.
So did you know Gary Cooper?
I did not.
And how about Ernest Hemingway?
No, I know the sons, Ernest Hemingway, I know Cooper's daughter, and that, but no, never.
So how did you decide to make this movie?
Well, I always loved Hemingway as a writer. He's one of my favorites, and growing up as a kid, even though Cooper was in the 50s, I always found him fascinating too. And at some point in the 80s, I discovered that they were very good friends, and I took it to I was working for something called the Arts Network at the time. It later became A&E.
I remember that.
Do you?
I ran a cable station here in town, and he used to have that on.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you. Sorry for interrupting.
No, I used to do documentaries for them, and they gave me some financing to do some research on it. But the fellow that was in charge left, and then the woman that came in that took over, she scotched everything that he had approved. So I kind of put the idea away until the late 90s. I got a chance to go out to Sun Valley and meet people, and it regenerated itself. Became friendly with Maria Cooper. She lives in New York too. So we just started talking about it. I met Patrick Hemingway. Jack Hemingway, and it just built up again. So I thought we started raising some money. And
So what is it that attracted you to Gary Cooper and Ernest Hemingway and their friendship?
well, because it seemed so, on paper, it seemed like an impossible friendship. I mean, Hemingway, the loud, allegedly boorish, drunken and brawling, and Cooper, this quiet, a cowboy, not particularly possessed of great depth or anything on paper. And that fascinated me. I said, there must be more to both men than their public personas.
And there it turned out to be. So what did you discover?
That they both, on purpose, developed a public persona that completely masked who they were underneath. And they spent their entire adult lives hiding this, and that fascinated me. And it had something to do with masculinity as it's perceived, that, especially in those days, that you had to be tough, test yourself, go out and face danger and that sort of thing. And while they both did that, underneath both were extremely well-read men. Cooper was on his way to the Art Institute to study when he ended up doing stunt work in Hollywood. Cooper was very good friends with Picasso, John O'Hara, Irwin Shaw, Clifford Odets, Senator Jacob Javits from New York. I mean, Governor Averell Harriman. It wasn't what you think of Gary Cooper. And Hemingway the same way, that underneath there was this sensitive, very shy man, and that's what made this such a fascinating.
So what did you use for footage?
Well, the Cooper estate had, Cooper was an amateur photographer, and he had cameras at a very early age in the 30s, an extraordinary amount of footage of his family, himself, their various vacations all over the world. I mean, he was friendly with, this is probably not something you should admit today, but he's very good friends with the Shah of Iran, the 50s.
Politically incorrect nowadays.
Yes, right. Even though we put him in.
Yes, indeed. Strange bedfellows, huh?
Right.
You never know.
Yeah. So we have a lot of that footage, and there's some footage of Hemingway throughout the 30s and 40s and 50s, not nearly as much, but we're able to glean, thank God for the internet today.
Yes.
It's an astonishing resource.
Isn't it amazing?
Yes.
You find so much stuff out there.
Yeah.
Did you do your own narration?
No, Sam Waterston
Sam Waterston
does our narration.
Okay.
He came in for several days, and
Did you do any shooting out here in Sedona? I mentioned that to you earlier, that you didn't realize that Gary had come out here and done a lot of movies.
no, but had I known it, I'd have found an excuse to shoot here. Trust that. Trust me on
Bring me
that.
out. Yeah. So when do you have screenings?
Thursday night at 8 o'clock at the Sedona
Oh, the Performing Arts Center.
Performing Arts Center.
Whose locals say SPAC.
There you go. I'll practice that and
Yeah,
then
yeah.
come across as a local, not a hick from out of town.
Nobody will know. It'll be our secret.
Yeah, I think Mariel Hemingway's going to be there with me on stage. And,
Oh, terrific.
Yeah.
Really terrific, yeah. We'll be sure to cover that on our streaming video stuff and make sure we archive it so that people can come back and visit it. I mean, these are two giants in movie making and literature. They're incredible. Cooper and Hemingway. An odd couple when you think about it.
Yes, very.
Too far away. So what else, John? Tell me a little bit more about your film. What have I not asked you about? What else? Well, let me ask you then.
No, go ahead.
What other films have you done? Have you done other films?
Yeah, many with the Arts Network. on the late poets and Eastern European composers, Macbeth, Charles Dickens, several since then. But one thing, we were able to get some interesting people as talking heads on this. And one we got was the actor Kirk Douglas.
The Kirk Douglas.
Yes, the
Senior.
anchor. Yes, right, yeah. Father of.
Father of.
He had written a letter in early 1961 to Gary Cooper. He was making a movie called Lonely Are the Brave, a modern day Western. And the letter is saying there's only one man who should have done this. My crew knows it, my director knows it, and I know it. And it's about Douglas saying, well, since my director keeps saying before every shot, play it like Gary Cooper, I've got to try to find out. And it's about trying to understand how Gary Cooper remained Gary Cooper for 35 years on top. And it's a tremendously emotional, he reads it. And it was after his strokes, but after he had taught himself to speak. And it's really a very moving picture of both himself and of Cooper, of what Cooper meant. Yeah. It's very moving. That's something I want to say.
You know, it's nice to connect with somebody in that way. You know, it's like, well, I was saying, like old kindred friends.
Yeah.
But also to discover who these people really are. I mean, there's the persona, and then there's who we really are.
Yeah.
You know, John Wayne seemed to be John Wayne no matter what. He was John Wayne. My father used to fish with him up at Crowley Lake in the Sierras, and he'd come back and tell me stories about John Wayne. It's just, he's the same, on camera, off camera. Mr. Cooper, different.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. We covered John Wayne some in this because Mr. Wayne tried to have Cooper blacklisted during the making of High Noon. And so we get into a little bit of that.
Why would somebody do that? Subject for another interview, okay, John?
Yeah, better.
Okay. Let's leave that one alone.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let me ask you this, how are you finding Sedona?
It is exquisite. It is, we're staying out at Enchantment, the resorts, and it's in, I call it a box canyon, it's Boynton Canyon.
Yeah.
And you cannot look any place that isn't just so startlingly evocative. The color of the rocks, I mean, I've never seen anything like it.
It's magic, isn't it?
Yes, yeah, I mean, you can't have a better name for a resort than Enchantment. And, I can see how, what I'm surprised at is there aren't about 8 million people living here.
Yeah, it's one of the unique things. It's Sedona's sort of, Sedona's an island in the middle of the forest. We're surrounded by national forests, so there's only so much we can build out. That's it. We can't build out into the Forest Service land. So that's one of the factors that keeps the population down. Just, you can't build. Well, I think we're at about 80% build out.
Oh, so that's a benefit, really.
So it really is. You know. In some ways, it very much is. The area here is growing south, down to Cottonwood, down to Cornville, and not so, well, Flagstaff, of course, is growing quite a bit up to the north of us. But the valley, knowing that Sedona is its own little enclave and there's a limit to how much you can build, they're moving south. So I live in Cornville.
Oh.
I lived here for 25 years, and it wasn't a small town anymore. It got big all of a sudden. So I moved down to Cornville where it's quieter and more rural.
But will people eventually move there?
Yeah. As you know, there's the geographical limitations of it, but there's also economic drivers too that cause this town to become a little bit more exclusive. Prices of homes are higher now because they're running out of inventory.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of things that make Sedona unique, and quite an interesting place to live.
Oh,
Like the vortex energy out of Enchantment is, you can feel it. I can feel it. Just you feel, just I feel good.
Yeah.
I'm coming back here again. I like this.
Yes.
It's what they call it Red Rock fever, incidentally, John.
Oh,
So.
see, I'll whip that on someone too.
Red Rock fever.
I'll be a local before I know it.
That'll be it. You'll probably buy a house after you've been here for a little while. Yeah, yeah. So what else, John? Anything else you'd like to share with us?
No, you guys have just been so great. Everyone associated with this whole festival has just been delightful.
Yeah. I have to give credit to, not just to Pat Schweiss, the executive director, but he's taken this in 10 years and built it and fashioned it sort of like him. You know, he's a wonderful, nice man, and he's considerate, he's kind, he takes care of people, and he's got an army of volunteers that have put this festival together. And they have waiting lists of people who want to be here, who want to help out.
That's terrific. Well, Pat contacted us. We did not send something. He contacted us and
Really?
said, could we please? And we said, my God, to be a week in Sedona?
Well, I don't know.
Right.
I'll have to think about this.
Yeah. And he has been so gracious to us for
Yeah.
anything.
Yeah.
But everyone has. Everyone is just so lovely.
Welcome to Wishtown. Well, I guess we'll call it a wrap. What do you say? Good? John, thank you so much. John Mulholland from LA right now. What do you?
NYC, New York.
New York City, okay. See, we were talking earlier about Mulholland Drive.
Yeah.
So, well, welcome to Sedona. Thanks for sharing your time with us, and we'll definitely be to your screening on Thursday night.
Thank you very much for having us.
Thanks for joining us, ladies and gentlemen.